Thank you for the introduction. I'm not going to make this long. How long do you need to set this up?
Oh, 5 minutes.
We're good.
5 minutes, okay.
We're good.
I was a journalist until last night with the Icelandic state broadcaster, and got a message last night that I wasn't needed anymore. I have a lot of thoughts about the Wikileaks, and actually something that you haven't discussed here about the role of Wikileaks and the wake-up call that Wikileaks should be to us journalists. Maybe I'm not going to discuss that in details, but Wikileaks for Iceland, where I'm from, is quite important. Wikileaks became a household name in Iceland exactly 1 year ago. Next weekend, I think, when they published a very important dossier from the largest failed Icelandic bank, containing detailed information about the high exposure loans from the failed Kaupthing bank. I think they stole some of your money as well. But they are all living here, the people from that bank. It helped us journalists in Iceland tremendously in understanding why the banking system in Iceland failed and collapsed. Later on, there were a lot of information coming out from Wikileaks that helped us in our investigation in why actually Iceland went bankrupt. Julian showed me the Collider murder video in February, I think it was, in a cafe in Reykjavik, and actually it was shocking to see that. And I offered my assistance. The work on that video was done in Iceland, the technical details and the fact-checking in part. And it ended up that Icelandic State Television and Wikileaks made a cooperative deal that I would travel to Baghdad just a few days prior to the release. The thing was that I had watched that video, and I hope that, well, you all have seen it, right? I didn't see the raised hand before.
Yeah.
Everybody's seen it. Watching it, that incident wouldn't have been actually reported anywhere had it not been for the 2 Reuters employees who were killed that day. If it had not happened, it would never have showed up anywhere in a report, I think. Actually, maybe 3 lines. And you can all agree on that if you've been reading the reports from Iraq or Afghanistan. But watching it over and over and over again for hundreds of times, I started to think, I mean, the people there, the children, I mean, who are they? We need to get that information. We need to see why they were there. We need to get the broader story. It's important, not just the raw data. And I felt the urge to go down there and find out. We happened to hire a tremendously good fixer in Baghdad. And actually, I think we should have a huge statue for the good fixers.
There's a fixer fund. Frontline has a fixer fund.
Yes, please donate to the fixer fund. Please do. And we were able to locate the people there, the children, the mother, the widow, interview the people there, establish their identity, establish fairly well why they were there. We were able to establish that the people who were killed in the minivan were actually there incidentally. They're just driving by and rolled down with a 30mm shell, just stopping there to help a wounded man lying on the sidewalk. To get that out actually was a bit troublesome. I mean, there was not that much interest in that part of the story. Don't you agree, Julian?
Yeah. You get one shot, I think. You get one big shot. The second part of the story is hard, yeah.
But the thing is that with all this raw data that is now out, in my mind, these are, almost 100,000 reports. In each and every report, there is a story about a father who's taking their children to a special tutoring, stopping to help an unarmed civilian being killed. So there's a lot of work to be done on all these raw data is out there. So we're not done yet. And it should be an inspiration. Everybody I think it's part of the question why you asked everybody, are you going to start working on those, this information tomorrow? That, all journalists should welcome to get this flow of information and start working on it and bring it forward. Because that's the reality of the war. That's it.
Thanks, Chris. Good, very good.
Hit it.
Yes? What?
Hit it.
I don't need to hit it. I don't need to hit it. Okay, well, you see a typo at the very beginning if you're observant. This is wardiary.wikileaks.org. So how many people have seen this particular page here? Okay, it's not bad. Not quite half. So we can see here, this is sort of like a press release thing at the very beginning. I'll try and go through this quickly. My idea in speaking to you right now is to let you sort of understand how to go through this material, because the journalistic team put together by us, including the Guardian, the Spiegel and New York Times, has covered about 2% of the reports in this archive. 2%. Not the best 2%, just the 2% that we happen to go after. The vast majority of this material has not been revealed by the press or considered by a journalist. I was asked this question before. I'm continuing to ask this question, what is the big scoop in here? And of course there are a bunch of big and medium-sized scoops, but if we add up all the small scoops, that's really what makes this such an extraordinary collection. It is not the bus accidents that kill the majority of the population on the road, it's the car accidents, it's the pedestrian crossings that kill nearly everyone. To that end, I think this material will be seen a bit like opening the Stasi archives. It's not that any one particular person's Stasi file changed the relations between the new parts of Germany, but rather it was the incredible number of files on the German population and the revealing of the number of people informing on each other and so on that changed things. And as this worked throughout German society, we saw these changes coming about in lots of small incidents and also some big ones. Okay, so here we have how to read these individual reports. This is the reading guide. It's on the front page. It's also on each report page. You can click on a link and this will pop up. This is the fields on each report. These are explained, and I'll show you these in context in a minute. I just want to make it clear that this is all right there for you on the front page. Also, there is a link to a video sort of introduction that David Lee did. I would show it to you, but it has a 30-second advertisement in the front. And at the bottom of the front page, there is this map that we created out of the raw data. This is the top 1,000 most severe events. So what does severe mean? This just means we developed a score for every report, and the score was based upon the number of people declared to be, which is not always accurate, but declared to be wounded, killed, or detained. On this map of Afghanistan, there are the top 1,000, if you like, kill events, the most serious events during the course of the war. So we just pick one at random here. That it appears to be near the border of Afghanistan, and we can see this basic structure. You can click on here to get that reading guide or field structure. And here we have a unique reference ID. So if you're citing this in print or to someone else in email, all you have to do is just give that. That is completely unique. It is not anywhere even on the internet in any other form. So you can Google that thing and it will only refer to this. Latitude and longitude, the event took place, date, number killed in action, in this case 25, wounded in action 44. And here we have the summary of the report, the full text. So 1942Z, what the hell does that mean? So this is the sort of one thing that is not properly, actually it is explained in our reading guide, but you often see this Z, this means Zulu time, very convenient for you here in London. It actually means London time. Without GMT, US military standardizes to predominantly use London time for all of its operations. I don't know if that means anything for the future of London. Here we have the first acronym soup that you will see. And your eyes are probably glazing over and going, this is completely unreadable. However, we wrote a computer program to come up with all the acronyms and sort them by frequency and then hunted them down from the most frequent to the least frequent. Actually, we didn't get all the way to the bottom of the list because there's way too many acronyms. But because we started with the most frequent, most of the time, most of the acronyms will have explanations. And so you can see under this here, any guess what that might be? See?
Joint Special Operations Task Force.
Yeah. Combined Joint Special Operations Task Force. So if we put the mouse over here, Combined Joint Special Operations Task Force. Okay. Reports TIC. Any guess?
Troops in contact.
Troops in contact, right. You've read some of these awful things as well. This is a harder one. BCP. Aha. You see? Border Crossing Point. Small arms, RPG. Most of you will know what RPG is, rocket propelled grenade. Combined Joint Special Operations Task Force request, Red Dog QRF. Well, God, what does that mean?
Quick Reaction Force.
Quick Reaction Force. Transport 9 US military to reinforce Border Control Point 6 at this particular time, like 7:55 p.m. London time in the winter. this is Apache helicopter. Actually, this acronym expansion is wrong. It has the -64, but this is Apache Helicopter 1 overhead at 8:20 p.m. Border Control Point 6 reports no further contact. So actually, this is an unusually brief report considering the number of people killed, which is a little bit suspicious, actually, in this case. How did all the people die? They reported small arms fire. They request quick reaction force. There was an Apache brought in, no further contact. And during that, somehow, 25 enemy were killed, 44 wounded in action. This might not be too bad. It's less suspicious when we actually see a wounded in action count, because it means they've actually, they've gone there to the people afterwards and somehow attended the scene. But usually we don't see any wounded in action. We will see very large casualty figures, but no wounded, which is a bit suspicious, and no detained. And then there's a sort of the rest of the report fields that are usually not so interesting. So it's usually these ones that we've typeset in a kind of a nice, easy to read way that are interesting. These ones are usually not so interesting, but if you find the report interesting, then you might want to dig further and look at some of these. So reporting unit can be quite significant. Which one made the report? The others are not so interesting. This is a military grid reference system. This is just the coordinates in military language. And these are unique keys that the US military uses internally to track these. Notice down, this is sometimes interesting. It's rare that this is used, but this field will have things in it like may cause international press reportage. So that's it's a bit of a gold mine when you see that one. Or credible reports of coalition forces killing civilians, also a bit of a giveaway. That came in with General McChrystal, but rarely actually filled out. But you can imagine why. Military unit was there, hey, we just killed a whole bunch of guys, some of them were civilians, shall we put in credible reportage of us killing civilians? Well, of course not, it's not filled out. It is usually referred to when one military unit is reporting on the actions of another military unit. There is an unusual preponderance on US military units using that when they report on the Poles or on the Brits and so on. So it's a credible report of coalition forces killing civilians when it's not the US military doing it, but when rather they're talking about another group. Decolor here, completely irrelevant to read, but I mention it because this is the raw ingredients that is used to create the war room. And in the displays of the Pentagon war room, you've got to have a color for these events, and this is the color that is used. This is red, because the red corresponds to enemy-related action. Green is sort of neutral, and blue is the US military initiating something. And then at the bottom of the report, we see this latitude and longitude, which we have rigged up. You can also see this in terrain form, which can be interesting where you're dealing with border regions. So here we are, this is the Pakistan border. And we can see this is quite mountainous, even though if we're zoomed up really close, we can't see that. But just a bit further out, we can see how mountainous this is. Okay, so that's just a random report selected from the high kill count on this front page, of which there's about 1,000.
Have your experts interpreted this?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, you said that it's not clear from the data that's been provided by the military in this case.
Have we looked at that one in this case? No.
No, I'm just wondering
Yeah.
if as citizen observers, we want to look at this material, are we going to have any more information at our disposal than that? Is all I'm asking, because it doesn't make any sense to us, 45 killed, 55.
Well, you can sort of do Googles on the dates and the military units and the town that was nearby and so on, when there's not too much information, and also look at happened what just after that. It's work. I mean, you've got to dig. I'll show you. I'll give you a good example of digging, actually. So there's other ways to go through this material. Now this is what is on the front page. I will show you also another way that we went through it that is a little bit both harder because it's not immediately accessible, but in the end it's really what you want to do if you want to dig through this as a journalist, because you can limit it in more different ways. So we can browse by type. All these classifications here are given by the military themselves. These are not our classifications, these are US military self-implied classifications, and because they're self-implied, it is like the police reporting on the police. Remember, they're not necessarily accurate, but still often quite interesting. So 1,288 reports of detaining operations, friendly fire events self-labeled 148. So if we click on those, we'll go to an index of all of them. There's the category, which is a much more detailed classification. And so here we can see we're only up to C in this list of classifications. And so there's all the categories. And sort of a interesting example, blue on blue. This is another type of friendly fire. Blue on this means allied to allied friendly fire. Blue and green, allied to Afghan police or Afghan army. Green is the native forces. Blue and white, attacks on civilians. Blue dash white. This is just someone didn't type in the classification field right, so we have to. In fact, when I was going about generating the acronym work list to expand this, some of these reports are written all in capitals, so it makes it a bit hard because every goddamn word appears to be an acronym from an automated point of view. And I ended up with 13 different spellings for attack in capitals. So you can see the sort of variation. People are just, enormous numbers of people over 6 years have been putting things in. They are human beings and they're operating in such a way to get rid of this annoying and almost pointless task. If you're a soldier, this is an annoying and almost pointless task. You have to do it, but you want to get it done with as quickly as possible. So we can see here escalation of force, 2,271 reports that have been tagged with that category. So let me just pick one. I should show you what it looks like in the index first. So this is the title. This is just the first part of the summary field has been included in here, so it's quick to read. And once again, you can get these acronym expansions. TF is task force. Local national was shot and wounded in the vicinity of Kandahar. And EOF is escalation of force. So 1 civilian killed. Task Force Denali reported that 1 local national was shot and wounded in the vicinity of Kandahar. Task Force Denali was conducting a recovery mission, ISO, what is that? In support of Task Force Chamberlains. Route clearance platoon 6 on Highway 1. A local national was suspected as a suicide bomber, and Task Force Denali, no explosives. They executed the escalation of force drill. So this is actually exculpatory language. We did the drill, we went through the proper procedure. So I haven't seen who's written this report, but I would suspect that it is the task force concerned because we see this exculpatory language. The local national did not respond and was wounded. Bomb disposal confirmed no explosives were on the local national. Medical treatment was provided at the scene, and the local national was evacuated to some medical facility at Kandahar base. Public Affairs Officer message being prepared for ISAF review. So they're getting ready to put out the preemptive propaganda. No other casualties or damage reported by Task Force Grizzly. Significant action is still open at this time, and they have some tracking number. So, this is interesting. Okay, originated group unknown. Reporting unit that reported as Combined Joint Task Force 82. And unit name, Combined Joint Task Force Operator 2. So this is a self-reported incident, which is why you would have seen that exculpatory language. Now, we can then see, where did this happen? Okay, this is, remember it was a road that they were driving along, and a local national came up to them and they shot him. Okay, so is it this road or that road? Well, this one looks a bit green and goes under something else, so that's a river, and that's a road, so it happened on that road. And if we then look for, well, what is the surrounding context? I mean, the report itself is very brief, but we can get a bit of the surrounding context by going, hey, look, this is a town, doesn't look like a terribly functional one, a bit decrepit, just outside the main housing region over here. And some fairly well-structured farmland. Look at that, it looks like checkers, actually. Okay, now...
Sorry, can I just jump in here for a
yeah.
second? I don't want to be a jerk here, but there's a couple of mistakes in the analysis there.
Yep.
And I wonder how much expertise you had in decoding, and not just the acronyms, but the thing at the end you said the significant activity is not right. That's signal activity, so they're still intercepting.
No, that's significant activity.
It's signal activity.
No, that's significant activity in these reports.
Okay.
SIGINT is something else.
Yes, it does. But SIGACT is signal activity, so it's still ongoing.
Yeah.
So if they've got information, and the RCP is a route clearance package, not platoon, if they've sent guys out, if they've got information that there is an IED out there, and they've sent out somebody to look for an IED, and I'm not disputing what you're saying.
All things could be possible. I'm only saying what immediately
So
comes
I'm just wondering, because I can read that in a very different way.
Yeah.
I'm not defending them, I don't know the incident, but how much expertise was brought in the analysis of this? How many people who really
This did
understand
form
this?
the basis of a Guardian story, which has many more details in it. Yeah. So there you go. And the SIGACT on the fields, I'm not sure about that one that's in the body, but the field SIGACT is significant activity. Okay. And for expertise, and we bought back the war correspondence. New York Times bought theirs back, Guardian bought theirs back, and the Spiegel bought theirs to look at this material. Okay, date. This is mainly important if you're after something from a particular date. You already know the event. But it's also interesting to look at the progress. So here, at the beginning of 2004, we have 138 reports filed in a month. You go to 2006, we have 936. But it wasn't, at least, I suspect there wasn't that much escalation in the war. It wasn't a 3.5-fold escalation in the war. Sorry, 4.5 times escalation in the war during that period. So that must correspond to increased reporting as opposed to increased escalation. But by 2008, we see that reporting is going down during the winter fighting season. So that the winter fighting season is knocking off the reporting faster than the reporting is increasing, which means the reporting isn't increasing that fast anymore, which means that this is probably the unit's procedures for reporting are probably fairly well established by 2008.
But these definitely all the reports.
These are the majority of the reports. They don't include most US Special Forces operations, don't include CIA operations, don't include top secret operations. It's possible they don't include some units that weren't fitted out. But why we know this is the majority of the reporting is because when we add up the civilian kills in the reports, we get figures very close to what the Pentagon is reporting. So, unless, of course, the Pentagon may be sweeping an enormous category under the rug as well, which is possible. But as far as we can see, this is feeding into their sort of statistical reporting and explains most of their statistical reporting. So by the end of last year, we can see well, remember there's also 15,000 have been removed from this, so the report's a little bit higher. But by the end of last year, we can see we're looking at around 3,000 reports a month. If we pick a month, we can see an overview that we've generated for each month. So you can get a feeling for how intense the month was. This is killed civilians, killed enemies, killed host nation, etc. And a graph across the month. And then you can go through the month itself. This is a big month. There are 66 pages, 66 index pages alone. Okay. Browse by severity. This is the severity metric that we worked out, essentially just the number of people killed, wounded or detained in a report, all added up, then the whole lot sorted throughout the 6-year period. So here we have the top report. And this took place 9th of the 9th. So some of you who know a bit about Afghanistan will know this is in a time of Operation Medusa. And in fact, this latitude and longitude corresponds to not too far from Kandahar. where Operation Medusa took place. What is significant about it is that we can immediately see 181 declared enemy killed, 1 wounded, 0 detained. So that's a bloodbath in anyone's language. There is 1 friendly killed. And if we go through the report, we can see that in fact that a US soldier who was in sort of command of the Afghan component was killed. Combined Joint Special Operations Forces requested a medevac. So it's interesting to see that this report actually probably comes out of the medevac and not the combat troops. If you read through it, you can see they engage some, what they say is Taliban. At some stage, they receive small arms fire, and then eventually they call an AC-130 gunship. This is a big cargo plane that's converted to have cannons all along its side. Goes around an area, firing on that area. The battle damage assessment from the close air support, that's the aerial support, was 62 killed in action. And then by 1810 London time, a US wounded in action was evacuated to Kandahar. There's more gunship action. They kill another 5. The special forces then fire on 3 more Taliban, resulting in another 2 killed and 1 enemy wounded in action. Total battle damage assessment is 181. So you should see immediately that there's some missing 90 people killed whose deaths are not explained. I did some research of this report. We didn't have time to track it all down, but it occurs in Operation Medusa, which was the biggest operation in Afghanistan post the 2001 invasion. And most of you won't have heard of it because Afghanistan wasn't on the radar during that period. It's a Canadian-led operation, but this is US Special Forces reporting. The Canadian military just 2 weeks ago put up an enormous wiki page on Operation Medusa, probably not preempting this, but preempting a book that's about to come out in September on what happened in Operation Medusa. Although that book is written by a former officer, so I'm not sure which way it's going to be pointing. Will it be looking at the heroic acts of the Canadians, or will it be looking at situations where 181 enemy are killed versus 1 friendly? And you can go through all these things. There is a number of significant IED events. So yes, the first event was US Special Forces with a huge gunship killing 181 people. But the second most significant event is an IED out the front of the Indian embassy. Third most significant event is another coalition attack. Fourth most, another IED. So you can get a sort of an idea that these very big kill events, they are sort of half IEDs and of civilians and half military operations. Okay, so that's a simple and immediate way to read this material. Then if you go to Wikileaks itself and you click on the front page Afghan War Diary, you can see ways that you can download the whole lot as HTML. All that stuff, you can stick it on your local computer on a thumb drive, carry it around, post it. It makes it fast and easy to access. You can index it through, I don't know, Spotlight or some kind of local search engine. Here's the whole lot as a compressed CSV database. It's very simple text. You can even search it in a text editor. You can import it into Excel. However, it's too big for Excel prior to 2007. But you can sort of split it in 2 files. So you just import the first 65,000 and the next 65,000. And there's a little bit of massaging you have to do. It's so big it'll take 20 minutes to load and 20 minutes to save. But autosave on Excel kicks in every 20 minutes. So after autosave kicks in once, it'll save for 20 minutes, and then you'll come back and it'll then kick in again and you'll save for the next 20 minutes. And in fact, you'll just be autosaving forever. So this used up the first 2 days of our sort of bunker in The Guardian, New York Times, and other people. We just spent the first few days fighting Excel. This is all entries in SQL format, so you can give this to technical people and they know what this is. This means they can put it immediately in a database and you can run all sorts of statistical programs on it. This is KML format. You can pull, if you've got a machine with a lot of memory, you can pull the whole lot, the whole war, into Google Earth. We have created this file so you can see the entire war and the progress of the entire war in Google Earth, together with the text of each report and the location. I'll show you that in a minute. If you don't have enough memory in Google Earth, we have some like subsets of that. This is all the entries that are tagged with NATO. Now that is not all the entries related to NATO. There are many more, but it's the ones that the US military has tagged as being related to NATO. This is Google Earth month by month, and this is just the big kill events you can import into Google Earth. So just the sort of top 1,000 big kill events. Okay. Some questions?
How do you know that what is linked to you is genuine? I mean, is there not a chance that somebody could sort of figure out, for instance, how military files are done in the US and then create false documents?
Yeah, so we were always worried, what's the other than this not working, what is the worst case for WikiLeaks? The worst case is someone has the goods, classified information, extremely significant, and they modify it and put extra information in. That is sort of the worst case, extremely hard to detect. How would we know if one of these reports had been modified? Very, very hard. Of course, if you're then writing a more detailed story on one of these reports, you check it out compared to public record. But our experience is that that has never happened. We've never had that happen in any of our material. And it's easy, well, we know that no organizations that were sort of subject to these allegations ever complained that that has happened. So, and if they had complained, we would have investigated. Why doesn't it happen? Well, because if you're an insider in any big organization, you can go after some dirty laundry. There will be something significant there. And why ruin your chance of getting that information out? Why contaminate your, if you like, your big scoop as an insider with distorting it? You sort of, you know, first just get that information out, see how that goes. And we do sometimes see wholly fabricated submissions. They're quite rare. They're usually around election time. They will sometimes involve sophisticated efforts to distort an election campaign, but they are quite rare. And that is to be expected because every organization rests upon a mountain of logistical paperwork that comes for free. It's already produced, but if you're fabricating a leaked document, you need a highly intelligent person who has high opportunity costs. It's not guaranteed to succeed. In fact, it's quite likely to be found out, and especially if it's sent to WikiLeaks, it's likely to be found out because we are specialists in leaked documents, but we also release the whole damn thing. So the whole world gets to dissect it. I mean, if Judith Miller had released her leaked documents to the whole world, what would have happened? Well, of course, the Iraqi government would have been dissecting it. The friends of the Iraqi government would have been dissecting it. Opponents of the United States would have been dissecting it. Democrats in the United States would have been dissecting it, and the press would have been dissecting it. It wouldn't have lasted very long at all. And if you have that knowledge, you don't want to go through the waste of time in creating a document that is likely to be discovered as a fraud. Okay, so this is quite good for TV. Oops. I'm not sure why it's going there. It's patriotic.
Just while you're doing that, can I ask a quick question, please?
Yeah.
Do you personally, and actually bounce this to Vaughan, to a question for both of you individually, do you personally believe that this will or will not cause more US and UK military deaths?
No, I think it will cause less over time. Who knows what happens in a, well, I should say it. Of course, it's impossible to predict what happens week to week, but over time, this will cause, I hope, a restructuring of the war in Afghanistan. We can see that the death rate's already going up, so there's going to be some kind of restructuring, and it will hopefully lead to redeployment in different locations, or it will lead to some kind of peace settlement, which will cause fewer kills. Now here, we see this Google Earth interface. You can see a slider on the top.
And Vaughan, in 5 minutes, he can
Yeah.
answer the same question.
You can see a slider on the top from 2004 to 2009. Now, because this computer doesn't have enough memory to import the whole history of the Afghan war that we have released, this is a subcomponent which is just the big kill events. So the most about over 10, all about the events that have about over 10 people killed or wounded or detained. And this slider, if you download Google Earth, you just run it on this file. This slider permits you to open up a sort of window of time on what you're seeing on Afghanistan. And so we can see these markers here. And if we click on one, then we see the report corresponding to that marker. 78 enemy killed, 3 detained, 4 wounded. Now we can move in time this window across the war from 2004 to 2010. So we can see these events coming up and going away as they slip outside the time window. And as time goes by, you can really see the intensity of the war heating up. And we can also pull this window open to cover the whole 6-year period. Although once again, this is limited to the big kill events, and have a sort of feeling for where these significant, the most dangerous parts of Afghanistan are. I can try and zoom in here. There's such a profusion of stuff. Here's the border. So there's a question as to what's happening on the border with Pakistan. So this looks like it's right on the border. Okay, in fact, there's 2 things here. One is a threat report, and the other is an offensive. Is it possibly connected? Okay, so this is Combined Joint Special Operations Task Force, reports troops in contact, etc. At some stage they use 15 105mm heat rounds. Anti-coalition militia tracked to a compound, and it's not entirely clear what happens then, but it results in 23 enemy killed and 4 Afghan army soldiers wounded.
Is this the original document? What is the difference?
What is the difference? The what I showed you just then was pretty much the original document, the text. All these graphics, of course, we have added based upon the location data specified in the text. If you want to know what the original kind of looked like when we've got it, it looked a bit like. Well, actually, I can't show you. It's on a USB stick, but it looked like just a profusion of unreadable text.
Translated actually in effectively.
That's right, yeah. It's effectively a
You
translation.
translated actually. And did you delete some details that might endanger the insider? Or?
No, of the material that has been released so far, nothing has been deleted. We have held back 15,000 that some might require deletions before they're released now. But eventually, once the war in Afghanistan settles down enough, we will release the full information.
Julian, we should start wrapping up if that's possible.
Yeah, so that's the interface you can access right now. You go home and you can do that right now. The Excel spreadsheet we will make available in the next day or so. The one that's been published by The Guardian is just a very small data set in their Excel spreadsheet. That's only 300 reports that they use to inform the stories in the Guardian. The full spreadsheet has 76,000 reports in it. Okay.
I think I'm sorry. We've got to end. I do apologise. All right. Well, look, you did have your hand up earlier. Last question. Are you happy for one more?
I'm happy for lots more.
Are you? Well, do people want us to carry on? You sure? Okay, we normally don't, but if you're happy to carry on, then let's answer some more questions.
Hi. Sorry for my bad English. Okay, I'm a freelance designer. I spent 18 months in Afghanistan, and I'm wondering if you feel like translating the whole machine in Dari one day. Just in Persian language.
Translating it to...
Yeah, work with like some kind of people who are working in Afghanistan and doing the...
That's
like,
quite an interesting idea. Yes, that should be done, I suppose, but it's a lot of work. I mean, we're talking about 200,000 to 300,000 pages of material, although some of it can be done in an automated way, and it is quite obtuse and difficult to read. But it does remind me of an event that we had in Denmark quite recently, where a Danish Special Forces soldier wrote a book about his experiences in Afghanistan, was about to publish it, and the Ministry of Defense in Denmark filed for an injunction to be given on a Tuesday. We received an electronic copy of the book on late Saturday night and published that, and Folketen, the sort of Danish equivalent of The Guardian, published the whole book in its Sunday edition in an attempt to subvert that injunction, the whole book. So the Guardian's getting pretty punchy, but it hasn't reached the highs yet. It's still got a little bit further to go. They also they were having a fight over a refugee issue with 14 refugees, Afghan refugees in Denmark, who were going to be deported. And Folketen, after sort of fighting it in its pages, lost politically And so when the deportation order was just about to go in, they hired them all as employees. So they then had a right to stay in Denmark. So after that book came out and we published it, there was suddenly a leak to BT, a sort of tabloid in Denmark, and a tabloid TV company associated with it. That leak was an Arabic translation of the Danish book by the Special Forces soldier. Now, the reason the MOD went for the injunction was that they claimed that the sort of tactics would be revealed by this book. However, I mean, my opinion is that it is mostly because it was a very embarrassing book. Now, the tabloid then said, look, my God, already this book has been translated to Arabic, and ran with the allegation that it is now being used in Afghanistan by foreign forces to deliberately target Danish troops. So that would probably happen to us if we translated that thing into Pashtun. However, when looking closely at the file sent to BT, a Word document, looking under the Properties tab, we saw the company that it came from and it was licensed to, that copy of Word was licensed to. Where was it licensed to? The Ministry of Defence Press Office. That revelation took the head of the Chief of Defence of Denmark.
Yeah, okay. I want to add something. If you feel like trusting an Afghan company in Kabul, I know one who could translate the whole system. Pashtun.
Okay, let's do it. Let's do it.
Do you want to just come back?
Julian, can I just ask quickly? You said earlier that WikiLeaks is accountable more than anyone else to the public and to the people who are reading.
Maybe
these
not more than
documents.
anyone else, but certainly more than almost any press organisation I can think of.
What I want to ask is, it seems to me over the 2 or 3 times that I've seen you speak recently that you have been uncomfortable fielding questions, and there have been a lot of them, about the processes, about the expertise that was brought to bear on these documents. Can you speak quite clearly, without naming names obviously, about what outside expertise, apart from the media organisations you worked in conjunction with, was brought to bear on these documents? About what kind of personnel, if there are any kind of retired military personnel, and exactly what kind of security vetting processes those documents went through to get you to a point where you were confident that you weren't releasing material that would endanger troops or
Well, once
sources.
again, we are not an organisation that is about protecting troops. We're an organisation that is about protecting human beings.
Are troops not human beings?
Yes, but you said protecting troops. Why didn't you say protecting human beings?
Well, I said protecting troops, protecting sources, protecting...
No, you said protecting troops. The first thing out of your mouth. Why is that?
Well, because it seems to me that in these
It
documents...
seems to you that that's the more important issue, protecting
No, not the
troops
more
than
important
protecting
issue.
civilians?
No, not the more important issue. But it seems to me like troops might be one of the foremost groups put at danger by the release of these documents. If you're publishing detailed lists, which you have prior to this leak, of equipment available... Western troops have extraordinary physical protection in Afghanistan. They are, to some degree, as individuals in Afghanistan, they are probably the most immune groups in the entire country. It is the civilians and the aid workers in Afghanistan that don't have that sophisticated protection. Those are the people that we were primarily concerned about. Now, we do have ex-military people in our network. We do have ex-intelligence people in our network. Were they
we do
consulted
have
in the preparation of this
people
release?
that write for strategic magazines in our network of people that looked at this material.
Can I come in here just in order to moderate again, in other words, to be between everyone? The question is the people who were most exposed to the release of the information were not the Afghani insurgents.
Absolute.
The question is...
Absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense.
Well, that's his question. The release of documents relating to US troops and NATO troops, release of that information is more germane for those people. That's what he's asking you. Do you want to sit down and B, respond to his point, which is that if this material, which is compiled by these troops, is then released, he's saying, is that not of more significant life and death interest to the people to whom it relates, their contacts?
No, that's not what he's saying at all. He's asking what expertise did we bear to understand whether this was a special issue to troops.
Well, right? What I'm asking quite clearly is what expertise was brought to bear on this information in order that you could be quite confident that you weren't endangering troops on the ground.
Yes.
Yeah. And also,
there were civilians on the ground that were our primary concern. It was sort of, if you like, innocent informers that don't have any protection. That is our primary concern. In protecting those people and releasing this material, were you prepared to put at risk the lives of troops on the ground? I don't understand. The troops are there. The troops run around all day with guns. I mean, come on. Do you think these people aren't already being targeted in every way possible? No, okay, I'm not making a value judgment about the dangers posed by the recent material. It's more just I wanted some clarity about the expertise that was used in the preparation of the material, because it seems like that hasn't been made entirely clear. Quite fair enough, and I believe I just answered that question.
Okay, well, here at the back, a gentleman who's been quiet on that. Will you wait till the microphone comes over? It's quite a job to get it to. Have you got one there? Here, will you pass it there? End quite soon because the building gets shut. Okay, 5 minutes, then the building gets shut down. You in the white safari suit.
I work on Burma, and I was looking at what.
Would you give your name? I beg your pardon.
My name is Guy Horton. I work on Burma as a researcher, human rights researcher. What impressed me about that was I wonder how transferable the kind of work you've done in Afghanistan could be to a situation like in Burma. That's my first question. We have an enormous amount of information that hasn't been put together in that kind of way. The second question is, I haven't been to Afghanistan and I'm not an expert on it, but I have some kind of moral ambivalence about it, in the sense that I don't have about Burma and I don't have about, say, Vietnam. There's some ambivalence in me about it. And the ambivalence is this: supposing the excellent work that you're doing, which is putting human beings first above troops, which is absolutely right, but supposing the political impact of this is to weaken NATO's resolve to stay in the country, which may or may not be a good thing, but what you're doing is having a political impact and will have a political impact. Is one of the possible consequences of that is that we end up with some reactionary nihilistic regime which actually does more harm than good? And
quite possible. And we never know how future unfolds. We take our best bet and go for it.
Sure, but does that keep you awake at night? The thought that ultimately you could actually... I think what you're doing is right, but my moral ambivalence is, in a situation like this, could we actually end up with a very, very reactionary nihilistic state that, wiping out girls' schools and all the rest of it? And have you perhaps contributed in some way to that possibly happening?
We have a serious role to play that we treat seriously. You never know which way events are going to turn. We just have to take solace in an important bit of intellectual philosophy, which is, without the truth, we can't do anything that is sensible. Any decision that is not actually based upon how the world is really working cannot be meaningful except in lucky circumstances, so sort of randomly meaningful. To do anything but that is to become completely inactive and just an irrelevant in the question of how history is to unfold and how justice is to be done. I don't take the view at all, and I in fact condemn the view that people should do so little as to ensure that they have no chance of causing harm. We can all make no mistakes by doing nothing at all. However, all of you who have done something and been surrounded by people who do nothing understand that is not something that any sensible person can approve of. You have to try and be willing to take the blame. To some degree, I mean, we are sort of in some way, a victim-driven organisation where our sources are potential victims, or they are exposing the abuses of real victims. So we have a sort of camaraderie with police, who are, the good police are also victim-driven, and that keeps them grounded. But in pursuing the rights of victims and justice for victims in the real world, which is dangerous, aggressive, involves vast numbers of people, of course, sometimes mistakes can be made. To date, we have not made a mistake in the identification material we have released. We have not made a mistake in having our sources exposed by anything we have done. We have not made a mistake in releasing material which has caused anyone to come to harm over 4 years. Clearly that can't hold forever, but I think that is a fairly enviable 4-year period.
But your question is about ushering in some woman-hating, nihilistic regime. Could you react to the answer that you heard before we move on to 2 more questions and then call it a day? You asked your question. Would you give us, the audience, your reaction to what you've heard?
Well, I find it difficult to answer that. I'm partly convinced by your commitment to defending human beings and to defending victims and to exposing the truth. And I think you're doing that, and I think you're doing that very, very well. But I still live at the back of my mind with the possibility that one of the unforeseen consequences of this good action might be the triumph of the Taliban and the triumph of a fundamentalist regime, which will push everything actually even further back. And I don't know the answer to the questions that I'm suggesting.
This is true for any act. It could be used, it could work its way through history such that it works out in a bad way. And I think that fear in most people comes because they are fearful of taking the blame. But instead of saying to yourself, guarantee that you will never ever do any harm, instead say to yourself, try to do some good and then work out how to minimize any harm that might come about, because the other paths lead to tremendous inaction, and in the end the failure to do good is, from a different perspective, causing harm.
But thank you for that, and I think thank you for coming back, because I think you've summarised, as someone who works in one area, doubt, which is why we're all in the room, I imagine. Would you like to ask this penultimate question, and you're the last?
Hi, my name is Benedict Kamada, and I'm a reader of The Guardian, and that's how I learned about your organisation. I'd like to step away from the current material you've released, and to me, the work you do, the wider work you do, seems such a critical and important sort of cornerstone of journalism. And my question is, what are you doing to train more people to do the kind of work? That's one. And two, you've been speaking about your organization. My question is, are you afraid that an organization you've grown too big and you need to split up in order to protect, I think, the vital and important work you're doing? And thanks again for the talk and for all your work.
Thanks. We are undergoing tremendous growth. We have registrations in 5 different countries and two sort of feed-through organizations. So we are growing our legally independent parts and socially to some degree as well, because each country is developing its own internal network of people. So to that degree, we're confident that if for some reason the organisation is strongly attacked politically and legally in some country, there will be enough parts in other countries that will be able to hold through the debate and prevail.
And to you, you're fine, well done. The marathon session, they're closing the club after you, so
Okay, thank
Make
you.
it good.
I'm Christiana Bakker. I'm a freelance journalist, but here in a private capacity for an interest in the region and in the new media. First of all, I'd like to ask you, who funds Wikileaks?
You do.
How? By clicking on it?
Go to any page and click on support and defend this work.
And that's how you manage to keep yourself going,
Well,
by
up until
donations?
January. Prior to January, I and the other people directly involved were funding it personally. After January, we decided to engage significantly with the public and have raised about $1 million since then, which I think is not too bad, considering what we're doing.
Fantastic. Now, recently, just this week, a friend asked me, who is doing work on Afghanistan and the Pashtuns and and this kind of the subject. He says he has a journalist out there in Afghanistan who has footage on how the troops, the British troops, are humiliating the local people, the Pashtuns, and asking them to undress and all sorts of things, humiliating their honor. Now, this man has footage. If he gets it out, what would you recommend? Is this the best way now to publish this kind of footage somehow on WikiLeaks, or would it be better to target a specific journalist as you did, who may be interested?
Yeah. Well, if he can safely get it out through some other mechanism, he should do that. We are not about popularizing particular material. We're a publisher of last resort. We operate where we're not in competition with the rest of the press. We operate in a vacuum that has been left by the rest of the press. And we're already overwhelmed dealing with the cases in that vacuum. So we're, all the time we get people sending us stories that have been ignored. In most cases, it seems to me, wrongfully ignored. But nonetheless, we are not an organisation of popularisation. We are an organisation of just being able to publish at all and protecting whistleblowers at all. So we take upon this fairly concrete, well-defined task. And once we've done that well, then perhaps we'll look at whether we need to expand to other forms of publishing.
And does anything get published?
No, I beg your pardon. That's it, really, it is. Otherwise, we'll all be arrested. So, audience, thank you very much. I've never been to a meeting which has been extended in the way that you have, and your questions, I think, really were much better than an interview. So well done to you, and Julian Assange, well done to you. Thank you very much.